There seems to be an acknowledgement now that the maximum pressure campaign sanctions didn't change Iran's behavior. But I would go probably one step further and say that it's difficult to delineate what of Iran's behaviors have changed with any sanctions over a long period of time. Now, you can argue that they came to the table when there were universal sanctions with Europe and others, that had brought them to the table, but really also what brought them to the table was the carrot. The sanctions are a stick, but there was a carrot, and the carrot is the negotiation of releasing the sanctions. So some still have this misconception that we could forbid them through sanctions from selling their oil to China or Russia. Well, you could have a military embargo. You could have ships all up and down their coast and they'd still sell their oil and gas across pipelines and across land to both Russia and China. Even a military embargo would not prevent them from this, and sanctions aren't going to prevent them from this. We need to quit looking at sanctions as the way to change behavior, because sanctions, frankly, don't change behavior. Sanctions are useful as a threat. If you're going to threaten somebody and say, if you do this, we'll do this, they might be a threat to deter behavior. Or if they're already doing something you don't want, you would ask them to quit doing that in exchange for removing the sanctions. But that means negotiations. But there are some members of the Senate who say they absolutely know in their mind that Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon. So they're essentially saying there are no negotiations and that sanctions are just for punishment. I think sanctions as punishment do have some effect. They punish, but they don't change the behavior. The punishment has been extraordinary, the maximum pressure sanctions, and no behavior has changed. But we have to at least think this through, that the only way you get anywhere is you have to give something they want and they give something we want. That's what negotiations or diplomacy is. Sanctions otherwise are of absolutely no value. And so really, it gets back to the general question. Most of it's mischaracterizing what sanctions can do. Sanctions can punish, and they are punishing, but they aren't necessarily bringing them to the table.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند